I'd like to share with you a project that we've been working on. As you know, ST Math is very successful in elementary school to build a love of math and get students to be proficient in mathematics, but we don't yet have something that works well in middle school. And so for the last 3 years, we've been doing R&D on a brand new approach to engaging teenage learners in deep mathematical understanding. And so I'd like to share with you what we're working on. So let's take a look. We've been working on a new design that we call Mathic STEAM, and it uses a graphic novel interface. We've iterated on it, and we found that it's really successful for engaging teenage learners. And we've also done a lot of work at getting to more depth. So students are really thinking at a deep level about the math, how it works, why it works, how to use it, and we're adding in components that let students explain their thinking and get feedback on their explanations. And so let me walk you through how this works. To get to deep learning, we use a 3-layer design. The first layer is an individualized learning layer, and here students go on a personalized adventure through a mathematical universe. One unique aspect of this layer, which is different from ST Math, is that we've embedded executive function training, cognitive training, in with the mathematics instruction. This middle layer is the collaborative learning layer. We use graphic novels to contextualize the mathematics through stories. So students get to see how the math is relevant to a variety of different situations. And the situations are mathematically very rich. And we design them so that they lead to really deep academic discourse where students are engaged in discussions. And the way we do that is we use multiplayer games where discussion and communication is a core component of how the games work. The top layer is a project-based learning layer. Here we use a virtual makerspace where students are able to design solution using virtual objects connected together in mathematical ways to solve problems. One really cool thing that we've done is that we use augmented reality and physical devices that are connected to the software to turn these virtual mathematical solutions into physical, real-world solutions that actually work. This is Nina Wu. She's one of our content designers and our lead story designer. Tell us a little bit about the power of stories in engaging students.
Something that we've been thinking a lot about as a team is how powerful it is for a student to see themselves represented, especially at the middle school age. They're developing their social identity. Part of that identity is like, are they successful in math or not? Is math for them or not? And I think what we're trying to say is math is for everyone. Another strategy that storytelling lends us is that it allows us to differentiate for all sorts of learners. At a very surface level, different genres of stories, we're drawing on mysteries, science fiction, romantic comedies, just your everyday stories, your hero adventures. And then one layer deeper, we're telling stories from all different characters. And this is an opportunity for us to address some social justice issues and equity in the classroom and representation. Our diverse learners who come from all sorts of like socioeconomic, ethnic backgrounds, they might see themselves in another character, and especially for our girls and girls of color, to see another girl of color using math to solve big problems and be heroes in the stories. I think that's very empowering. I think for us to make that leap and bring it into education is huge and a really exciting opportunity.
Okay, so this is Martin. Martin's a cognitive psychologist working at that top layer, the project-based learning layer. So tell us how that project-based learning layer makes the math come to life in unique ways.
So at the heart of this layer is this internet-connected step promoter. And what students need to do is create a device to solve the problem that we give to them. They can add attachments to this motor that we provide, but they can also use materials that they can find in the classroom. Once they built the device, they use math to program the motor to solve the problem. We don't tell them, this is the kind of math that you need to use. They work in groups and they need to decide themselves, okay, this is the math that we need to solve this problem in this and that way.
Is it only science or robotics, or are we connected to other fields like art and music?
Yes, we can also do art.
It's not just limited to science.
It's not limited to science.
Because math is a creative subject. Just it's not normally taught that way in school.
Yes, that is correct.
So this is Nigel Nisbet. He heads up our content creation. So Nigel's been testing the middle layer of our program out in classrooms all across the country. So Nigel, can you give us a little bit of a sense of what the feedback has been?
Teachers are consistently seeing students who they don't normally see engage in math classes, highly engaged. They're problem solving during the games, they're expressing opinions during the discussions. And as a teacher, it's been really fascinating to see how I can use this as a tool to actually bring the whole class engage in gameplay, in problem solving, and discussion and reflective behavior.
What has the reaction been from teachers and educators?
Universally, we've seen them be very surprised by which other students who are responding in the class. Every single time there have been students they've pretty much written off as math students who are very enthusiastically engaged in this process. So they've been loving it. They've been really, really excited to then try and use this themselves, which is cool.
Normally, classrooms in math are kind of boring, and students are not really engaged. So how is it different from in your testing?
So this is something that's happened every single time. The story is great, but then you start the games, and there's an atmosphere and an energy that comes to the classroom.
You got 207. Yay!
To see middle school kids really excited about problem solving and going, every single time you will hear kids go, oh, I don't get it. I don't get it. Oh, I got it. And every time you hear that again and again and again around the classroom. And that's like magic. I've had students who've said things like, wow, this was the best day in math ever. They've been really, really excited by that classroom moment.
So you've been testing all across the country at a whole bunch of different levels of proficiency, from low performing to high performing schools. So how have you seen any differences?
We've been able to use the same materials with classes of very, very different levels. So very high performing students have been able to dive in and work with certain aspects of this, but we've also used this with a class of a lot of English learners, and they were also able to dive in, do the same problems, solve the same things. And also the depth of learning, I think, has surprised a lot of teachers and schools, where they've seen their kids grappling, for example, with really big ideas like why is x to the power of 0 equal to 1? And they've seen them successfully sort of grapple with the ideas and make sense of them. And that's given a lot of power to the materials. We're seeing that the teachers and the schools are really surprised by the depth that the students are able to go to very quickly.
So you've been taking a really data-driven approach, and you're trying to make this program easy to use for teachers and highly effective for students. So tell us about the approach and how are things going?
So yeah, I mean, those are the two primary measures here. We want to take something which the moment could be quite tricky for teachers to do, and we want to make it really easy for them to use. Similarly, we want to make sure that the students, the engagement and the depth of understanding goes, and we want to make sure that we end up with that also very high. So we're basically iterating, and every time we iterate and change the program and test it, we're looking to see, okay, where does that fall on that continuum? We see certain innovations that maybe really bump the student engagement and understanding up, but are very difficult for teachers to implement. So obviously that sort of lowers the teacher thing. We want to make sure that we end up at a place, after all the iteration, very easy for teachers to use, but also extremely efficacious for students.
So that's Mathic STEAM. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what we're working on and how it's going to change the world.